Good to be back. I guess it's been about 5 months since I did my last video. It's already coming up on the end of March here, and this will be my first video of 2012. There just hasn't been really any news to discuss as far as the movies. The movies have come to a grinding halt, basically. And maybe I just needed sort of a bit of a break, too. What's bringing this video on now is that I recently went through the series again. Well, I listened to the Focus on the Family radio dramas, that is. And every time I reread the series, whether I'm reading the books or the books on tape or audio drama, whatever it is, I'm always discovering new things and also rediscovering things. And in this case, one of the things I really rediscovered is why I love the character Puddleglum so much. And I sort of realized, I've never actually done a video talking about, I'm sure I've mentioned the fact a few times, he's my favorite character. I mean, obviously I reference him in my screen name, so it's hardly a surprise. But I've never actually done a video saying, here's what I love about Puddleglum. Here's why I think he's so cool. So I guess it's high time I did one of those. The first thing that attracts me to Puddleglum, the way we're introduced to him. I think it's one of the best character introductions in the whole series. Lewis had some really memorable character introductions. Reepicheep and Voyage of the Dawn Treader is another one of my favorites. But the way it's set up, where we don't know who or what this character or creature, we're not really sure how to think of it, is going to be. And, Eustace and Jill, it says they both feel a little nervous. Eustace says, I only know it's a marshwiggle. Don't ask me what it is. So we're going to meet this thing called a marshwiggle, whatever that is. So I just love the way it's set up. I think we're a little nervous ourselves, and we're curious, what's this guy going to be? What's this new character or thing or whatever? So I love the way that Lewis kind of sets that up. Now, up to this point in the series, it's been mostly mythological creatures or talking animals. That's kind of been that we've seen in Narnia. And now we're going to a marshwiggle is one of Lewis's original creations. As far as I know, there's no marshwiggles in mythology or anything like that. So Lewis is really expanding the canvas here. And I've always said, in a nutshell, what is Narnia? In one sentence, I'd say that Narnia is a place where myths are real, where the things that are mythical in our world are real and they really do exist in Narnia. However, it's not limited to just the things that we have that are myths in our world. It's also things we've never heard about before. So Lewis is sort of expanding the canvas here by having an original creature. I like that. By the way, his introduction was changed slightly when Lewis published the books in America. Lewis made a couple changes when he published the books in the United States. And one of the changes he made was this scene right here where Puddleglum is introduced. And in the original British text, Lewis writes, and they both saw him, sitting with his back to them. He had been hard to see at first. He was nearly the same color because he sat so still. And Lewis changed that to, and they both saw it. This is the American version. They both saw it, sitting with its back to them. And I suppose what Lewis was trying to do here is have a more gender-neutral term for Americans. I've heard that in some countries, he or him in some contexts can be a gender-neutral term, just like how I might say, hey, come here, you guys, even if I'm talking to a group of guys and girls, I can still say, here, you guys. So I guess he wanted to change it to it, so it would be, gender-neutral, because they don't know if Puddleglum's male or female or what he is or anything. And I really think the American version was an improvement, because not only is it gender-neutral, we don't even really know whether or not we can think of Puddleglum as a person yet. At this stage, it's just this thing. It's just this creature. It's not until we get to know him that we realize, okay, he's a person. So I think it's much more ambiguous and more mysterious and adds to the slight, nervousness I think that Jill and Eustace have. That version, by the way, is out of print now. When HarperCollins took over the publishing in America in 1994, they reverted back to the original British text. So go into a bookstore anywhere in the world now, and that's what you'll find. So this version is now out of print, so kind of unfortunate. So Puddleglum starts talking, and I think it soon becomes clear pretty early on that he's going to be one of the most quotable characters in the series. Or certainly he has some of the most memorable quotes in the series. I would put him up there with Reepicheep in that regard. One of the first things he says, Puddleglum's my name, but it doesn't matter if you forget it, I can always tell you again. Just the fact that he adds that bit, I find really funny. Puddleglum has a reputation for being this really gloomy, Debbie Downer, eternal pessimist kind of character. Is that an aspect of his character? Absolutely, but it's a huge oversimplification to just leave it at that. First thing I would point out is that even though Puddleglum is always apparently taking a very gloomy perspective on things, often unrealistically and comically so, like, come on, that's not going to happen, I don't get the sense that he's actually depressed. If you really read the way it's written, although Puddleglum is saying, oh, I'm afraid of something, or I'm concerned about something, I think something bad is going to happen, I don't get the sense that he's like really, this is upsetting him or really worrying him. He's just saying, yep, that's the way it is, and we'll just have to deal with it. It's just, he's very matter of fact about it. I think Jill kind of picks up on this by the end of the book when she tells him, you talk as if you were afraid of everything, but really you're as brave as a lion. His attitude is not, oh no, it looks like it's going to rain, and we'll be cold and wet. That's not Puddleglum's tone of voice. I think his attitude is more like, well, it's going to rain, so, we'll have to deal with it when it happens. And he's always saying, put a bold face on it. When he really is talking about putting a bold face on life, usually I think what he's talking about is, bad stuff's going to happen, and you just have to deal with it. There's no point in crying over it. We'll just have to deal with it when it happens. And so that's the first thing I would point out, to say he's not just this constant gloomy character. I would also point out that, although, there's a lot of instances of him being comically pessimistic, very unreasonably pessimistic, there's also some instances of him being very optimistic, comically so. The most famous example being towards the end of the Silver Chair, it looks like they're going to be trapped underground, and Puddleglum says, there's one good thing about being trapped down here, it'll save funeral expenses. It's interesting, he just has this impulse, whenever things are going very, very good, it's his impulse to warn everybody involved, hey, things could go very, very bad, be careful. He'll find something, if he has to, or invent something that could go very, very bad. That's just his impulse. Likewise, if things are going very, very bad, it's his impulse to say, hey, don't be discouraged. Things could get better, or maybe things aren't as bad as they appear. Puddleglum is also a source of encouragement for them on the journey. When they're crossing the Sunless Sea, he actually says, hey, don't be afraid. We're underground now. We're following the signs. We're on the right track. And when the lady at the green kirtle is trying to convince them that that the words they saw under me had no relevance to them, it was just a coincidence. The other two are discouraged and frightened by this, and Puddleglum stands firm, and says, nope, Aslan, Aslan was there when those words were written. He knew like the way that the words under me were going to be left, and Puddleglum's not, he's not discouraged for a moment. So it's really unfair to just dismiss Puddleglum. Oh, he's a gloomy, depressed character. That's not the whole story. But even though he's always voicing these fears and concerns, he doesn't let it affect his actions. This is the aspect of Puddleglum that really makes him my favorite character, that makes him so noble and compelling and memorable. True, he's always saying, hey, be careful, something terrible might happen. But he's always going to do the right thing. The most famous example being at the end of, towards the end of the Silver Chair again, where Prince Rilian, who they don't know 100% sure is Prince Rilian, says the name of Aslan, and they're trying to decide, are we going to free him? I wonder, if Puddleglum had not been there, would Jill and Eustace have freed Rilian? I kind of think they wouldn't. Puddleglum, he immediately knows what he has to do. He actually says, I think we know what we have to do. And Eustace says, do you mean that you think everything is going to come out all right in the end? And Puddleglum says, I don't know about that. You see, Aslan didn't tell Pole what would happen. He only told her what to do. That fellow will be the death of us. Once he's up, I shouldn't wonder. But that doesn't let us off following the sign. Even though he's always voicing his concerns, even though he's apparently always afraid and paranoid about things happening, he doesn't let that affect his actions. He always does the right thing. And that makes that choice to do the right thing that much more compelling. You cannot be truly courageous without knowing there is something to fear. Puddleglum is always acknowledging there's something to fear. If there's nothing to fear, he'll come up with something to fear. But he still always does the right thing. Going back to what Jill said at the end of the book, once again, she says, he tells Puddleglum, you always talk as if you're afraid of everything, but really you're as brave as a lion. And so those are just a few reasons why, gosh, I love Puddleglum. I love, every time I reread these books, I just get a kick out of Puddleglum. There's just so many qualities in him that are fun to read, and also things that I would admire, not just in a character, but in a real person.